the other day you were talking about that you sort of have your processes where you need them to be, but nobody's using them, and you haven't logged into TouchStone. But the key word here is implementation. I attended a webinar last week on done by David Finkel. His company's called Maui Mastermind. He was talking on, it's classic stuff, the 5 steps on how to build a business that works without you. And he talked about how important it was to have processes. But at the end of the presentation, he added one last little thing. And he said that a lot of business owners think that all you need is a good team. In fact, there's a great book. It's called Good to Great by Jim Collins. It talks about you got to get good people on the bus. That's a pretty common expression that we hear all the time. It is. I totally agree with that. Michael Gerber sort of gives you this different sense that it's all about processes, but I think you got to get good people on the bus. It's really important to get good people. So David Finkel at Maui Mastermind, he says, but that's only one leg of a 3-legged stool. And he drew this stool and he said team, T-E-A-M, and that's one leg. The second leg he called processes, because if you don't have the processes to give to your team, then you're people dependent. And yeah, your business will grow to a certain point, but you will hit this virtual wall where you just can't get beyond, and things get chaotic and people leave, and well, you know the story. I mean, it's the whole reason why people create processes. So he had team as one leg of the 3-legged stool, processes as the other leg of the 3-legged stool. The third leg was what he called culture. And I thought that was an interesting term. And again, I agree with it. But culture is this very broad term. What does that mean? What is culture? And culture is a number of things. First of all, it is part of your strategic planning. And by that, I mean, it's part of your vision or mission, purpose, and values. It's a process that's actually in TouchStone in the general process library. It's a part of that because your culture is, why did you start this business? And this is usually an owner's conversation, but why did you start the business? Why do you have this business? In my case, I started this business because I wanted to change your life. You meaning managers, employees. It usually starts with the business owner when I have this conversation. And I don't usually say this because it sounds so cheesy, right? That I want to change your life. But the truth is, that's why I do this. And it's happened. It doesn't happen with every client, but I want to be able to make a difference in your life. If you're a business owner and you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and you're trying to grow your business and things are super chaotic and you don't have time with your family and your kids and your wife, well, if you can implement processes, if you can create a process-dependent business, that's going to make a huge difference. It can make a huge difference. So that's part of my culture in my business. When I hire someone, we talk about that. We talk about our big, hairy, audacious goal, which is what we call mission. So where do I want to take this bus? I want to bring you on my bus. Where do I want to take this bus? What's the destination? Well, I want to get 100,000 subscribers. And if you don't want to go there, then you probably don't want to be on this bus. I shouldn't hire you. You shouldn't be on this company. So that's part of it. That's mission. Purpose and values. The purpose is my why. I want to change your life. And if you don't believe that when I'm hiring you, then if you don't believe we can change people's lives, then that's important too. You probably shouldn't work for this company because then it'll just be cynical. It won't be authentic when you speak to people. And then thirdly, values. So it's mission, purpose, and values are part of the strategic planning process, part of the vision, which is part of the strategic planning process. And values are what we hold sacred here, how we work here. And again, this is part of culture. So how does that relate to process and how does that relate to implementation? Because Culture is really, when you drill it down, and Michael Gerber said this really well, it's how we do it here. That's culture. So it incorporates vision, mission, purpose, value. It incorporates, we've got a process-dependent business. So when I'm hiring you, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm going to hold you accountable to processes. I'm going to use processes to train you. So this is where we start talking about processes, implementation, getting people to use processes. When you're hiring someone, if you don't talk about this, if you don't have a hiring process that reminds you to talk about this, then it's going to get left out, and you won't get that opportunity from the very get-go to tell that new employee that this is how we do it here. We have processes. We hold you accountable to the processes. We train you using processes. We're going to teach you what is expected of you and how to achieve those expectations. And you can achieve those expectations if you follow the processes. And there's a management philosophy that is, it's not like we're going to beat you over the head with a hammer to follow processes. It's not bureaucratic. In fact, it's completely the opposite. What we want is your input. How is the process working for you? What can you do differently? What innovations can you bring to the process? We are all ears. We want to hear that. Processes are there as a foundation to get someone started and to train them. And they're there because we know they work. We have some sort of a baseline. We've got key performance indicators that we know are the baseline for, if you follow the process, you should be able to get this. We know because we've done it, but we can always make it better. So tell us how you think we can make it better. That is the management philosophy. That's also part of your culture. When you're hiring someone, you have a hiring process so that you remember to tell them about these things, and also to make sure that you get the right person on the bus, filling the right position. Because if you don't get the right person on the bus, and you should know this through the hiring process, you should know that you've got the right person on the bus. So many people, they don't have a hiring process. They're stressed, they need someone, so they just go, who do you know? Or they take the first person that comes in, and they don't have a hiring process. They don't have anything. They just throw someone in the job. And there's a guy, Brad Smart, wrote a book called Top Grading. In the book, he talks about how 3 out of 4 hires are mishires. What I say all the time is that's because you don't have a hiring process, you don't have a training process, you don't have a management process, and you don't have an evaluation process. And those, I would actually take David Finkel's 3-legged stool and turn it into a 4-legged chair and say, you got to have those four key systems. If you hire someone properly, you've got the right person for the right position, and you bring them in a systematic way. When they arrive, you've systematically taken care of all of the background information, background checks, W-4s, W-2s, non-disclosures, all that stuff. Imagine if you greet them at the door and you've got their business cards for them, and you say, hello, welcome, Josh, it's great to see you. Their desk is ready, their computer is ready, their American Express card is ready, their cell phone is ready. Tick, 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 tick. There's a whole checklist that you've prepared in your orientation and onboarding process. So that's very systematic. And then you begin the first day of training. So when they come on board, there's this very respectful, systematic process to make sure they get orientated to the company, that they are introduced to everybody. Maybe the boss takes them out for lunch. It's a very set plan. It's a beautiful game plan for, it's the post pattern in the NFL to get them oriented and onboarded into the company. And then they start their training process, and check, check, check. You go through every process on their job description and every process tool in every one of those processes to make sure that they know how to do everything that they need to do and what the expectations are. And here's where it is. Just log into your TouchStone account. It's right there. And don't worry about it because it's right there. You don't have to remember it all right now. Just, it's there. And then go. So now they start their job and they've got everything they need at their fingertips to do what is expected of them. And then at the end of, say, 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, depending on how complex the position is, because some positions are more complex than others, and you should have a drop dead date. So an absolute timeline, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, where you're going to let this person stay or go. The worst thing that anybody can do, any manager can do, is to say, oh, I don't know, I just don't want to go back to the drawing board. I don't want to fire this guy or this gal, and I don't want to have to go through the effort of hiring someone. I'm just going to hope and pray that it's going to turn out. That's like the worst thing that anybody can do in a company. Well, that's not the worst thing, obviously, but it's crazy making, and it's never going to work out. You should know. So at the 30, 60, 90 day, whatever that boundary is, you should make a decision. And in the onboarding process, the employee knows that. They know that they're going to be evaluated, that it's a probationary period, that they're going to be evaluated, and they can tell me as their manager whether or not they think they want to continue working here. Or I can tell them. And it's sort of a come to Jesus talk when we have that meeting. And if they don't work out, boom, I just go back to the process, the recruiting and hiring process, and I find someone else in the pipeline and I just run that process again. If they do make it, there's the one-on-one meeting process. It's a management meeting process. And by the way, all of these processes, I bet you they're in your account, but they probably haven't been reviewed. They probably haven't been customized. And that's what we're going to do in the workshop. We're going to make sure that those processes are in your account, and we will customize every one of those processes. So every company who attends that meeting will customize their process to make it work for them. And then we'll talk about how to implement it. That's why I'm calling it an implementation workshop. But you got to go back to the drawing board. If you let someone go at the 30, 60, 90 day mark, you got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, let's start again, run the recruiting process. And that to me is not a mishire. Somehow they got through your first few steps, but, and there's always a great opportunity. What I say to many of my clients then is, what did you learn from that experience where, you had to let someone go after 30 days or 60 days or 90 days? How did they get through the cracks? They shouldn't have got through the cracks. You shouldn't have to let someone go. But what did we learn? Is there a different test that we could use for this individual? In the recruiting process, there are a series of questions that, if you're hiring a manager, these are some questions that you should consider asking. If you're hiring a salesperson, these are some questions. If you're hiring an office person, these are some questions. So there's like 15 different categories of sets of questions that you would ask depending on the person that you're about to hire. Well, if someone got through, maybe you were asking the wrong question. So you can go back and say, well, what did we ask, Fred, when he went through this system? Maybe we asked the wrong questions. So you go back to the drawing board. But then if they make it through the probationary period, that first evaluation, there's the one-on-one management meeting system. And that's either a weekly or a bi-monthly, twice a month, or once a month process where a manager meets one-on-one with his employees that report to him. It's a classic management system. Part of it is to make sure that, you're checking in on projects and timelines and questions and challenges and issues. Part of it is what we call recognition and appreciation. So making sure that they, first of all, you're being brutally honest with them. If they're not doing a good job, then you let them know and you mentor them. If they are doing a great job, you let them know, but authentically, not just BSing them saying, you're doing a great job, Fred. It's no, I just heard from Sparky that new account that we got that was like $7 million, that the reason they bought it was because of the presentation that you gave them. You put a ton of effort into that presentation. They bought because of you. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. That's recognition. appreciation is paying attention to them. Who are they? Like if you've been with us for 6 months and been on time every single day, and then all of a sudden over the past 2 weeks you've been late, I got to check in. It's part of the one-on-one meeting. And I check in with you and I say, hey, Josh, are you okay? And I find out that, maybe your golden retriever you got a 15-year-old golden retriever, and you're having to deal with this issue of having to maybe put him to sleep. I say that because I had to do that. It's not recent. This was a few years ago, but I've had to do it twice. And if you have a dog, it's the worst decision that you can make. It's one of these things that we face. And if something's happening and my boss can ask me, Mike, what's going on? You're just not yourself. And I can be honest with my boss, and my boss can empathize instead of giving me crap for being late every day and making assumptions that are not true. So, but it's also, and this is all part of that one-on-one meeting, it's also about keeping processes current and utilized. So what I say to you is, hey, Josh, we've got this proposal follow-up process. Can you check in on it? Can you just go through it and see, are we still doing it this way? And the reason I say that is because if you're a salesperson for me, and I just use this as an example, and we have a proposal process and a proposal presentation process and a proposal follow-up process, and you're doing proposals every day, you're probably not going to be following that proposal process, any of those processes, unless you're not achieving expectations. But if you've been doing them, and if you were studying the processes and schooled in the processes, you can follow the process without having to read it every day. That's probably how you do it. But if there is a change in our software and you're not diving into TouchStone to do that proposal process on a daily basis, you're probably just going to adapt, and you're going to innovate, and you're going to add new things into that process. So what I want to know is, hey, Josh, are we still doing it this way? In my one-on-one meeting with you this week, I might say, hey, Josh, can you just look at that process? It's on your job description. Log into TouchStone, click on the org chart, click on your position, look for the proposal follow-up process, and just follow the process as if you don't know how to do it. Okay, just check in on it. And let me know next week when we meet, is it still working for us? Is this still how we do it here? And next week, come back to me and say, yeah, that's how we do it. Great. And actually in TouchStone, I mark it as complete, and it turns it from blue to black. And now I know that I've checked in on it at least this year. This is not something that I have to burden you with every single week, every single meeting. If you have 12 or 15 processes on your job description, I just want you to go through them all in like this year. So it might be 1 a month or 2 a month or something like that. And then at the end of the year, I'm going to mark them all as incomplete. And next year, we're going to start going through them again. Just let's check on them again. That's part of the one-on-one meeting. And then the last process, again, part of culture, part of implementation, is the annual evaluation. So you want to have an annual evaluation process. Most managers get into this annual evaluation process, if anybody ever even does it. It's a super valuable process to do. But most managers, when they do it, it's such a nuisance. It's so stressful because how can I remember? It's an annual evaluation. How can I remember what you've done over the year? I can really only remember the last couple of weeks. And so my evaluation of you is going to be based on the last couple of weeks. On the other hand, if I've got a job description which consists of a set of processes, and those processes have expectations in them, and we've been having one-on-one meetings through the year, either once a month, twice a month, or once a week, that evaluation is going to be a snap. And I actually evaluate you based on the processes on your job description. I grade you based on, you got that proposal follow-up process, you got it nailed. Great job, check. Or you don't. You're not very good at those proposal follow-ups. Everybody else in our company's following up, and after about 90 days, 25% of the proposals get, go through, but you're at 5%. What's going on? Are you actually following up with these people? So maybe not a check. And that's something we got to work on next year. So the annual evaluation process, all of this stuff is so simple, and it's not that difficult to implement. But if you don't create that culture, if you don't deploy the one-on-one meetings, if you don't start people off from the very beginning, it's not that easy. Then processes just sit out there in the background and they get stale. And I mean, that's one of the things that we do have people who come to us and they say, Mike, people aren't using the processes. We're dialed in. We got all those processes set. We're just going to want to archive all of our systems. And yeah, let's archive them, fine. But in 6 months, they're going to be stale. And probably in 8 months, 20% of them you don't even do anymore. Or 20% of them aren't going to be correct anymore because nobody's paying attention to them. Nobody's using them. All of that investment that you put into it, the time and the money and the patience and the energy, you don't get a return on your investment because nobody's using them. They weren't implemented. So that's what, this workshop that I'm doing is all about implementation. And it's not a workshop on implementation. I'm not really doing a workshop on implementation. We're actually implementing the processes that you have. So we're going to implement recruiting and hiring process, the onboarding and orientation process, the training process, the one-on-one meeting process, and then there's the evaluation processes, and then the sixth is task delegation. How do you effectively delegate a task? I think it's going to be a very powerful workshop to actually customize these systems and make them work for people so that they can keep their processes current and get their employees actually using their processes. It's only going to happen if you shine the light on implementation. And there are different levels. Like one level is when a new employee starts. That's the best time. Like if you're hiring new employees, man, if you start them off in a systematic way, if the way that you recruit and hire them is boom, 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 if the way that you interview them, boom, 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 if the way that you bring them on board and orient them to the organization is boom, 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 and train them, boom, 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 and they have all their processes, they're taken care of. You don't have to worry about these people anymore. The challenge is you've got a lot of people who have been there a long time, and you try to hold them accountable to processes, and they're going to say, take off, buddy, go away, I'm Canadian, I can say that. They're going to say, I know how to do it. Why do I have to follow a cotton picking process? How do you deal with that? What you have to do is you have to enroll people. You can't just force them. You can't just tell them. You can't just expect them. And you can't just give a process and say, there it is, use it if you want it, because they're never going to use it. So you have to enroll people. If you were a long-term salesman with me, for example, and I say this because I manage sales here, so I think about sales all the time. But if you were a long-term salesman with me, I would say, first of all, can you help me build the sales process? What do you do? I need your help because I want to build the sales department. I want to grow this company. Our goal is to get to 100,000 subscribers. I need more salespeople. I need more customer service people. Can you help me out? A lot of people want to help. And if I'm the boss and you're someone who works for me and I've actually come to you and said, you know how to do this job, I need your help. Whoa. A lot of people respect that. And then you start helping me. And part of the enrollment factor is I said, look, as we get more and more salespeople, I'm going to need someone to manage those salespeople. And managing those salespeople is going to involve training them. If you want to train these people, how are you going to train them if we don't have any processes, if we don't have any documentation? We need to write this stuff down. And also, We need to follow it so that we can figure out what can we expect of these new salespeople. If you've been selling for me for 10 years, I can't expect anyone else to do as well as you can in the first 6 months of their employment. It's not no way. How am I going to make sure that we know what to expect of them? Well, let's you and I follow that process that we wrote. Like, let's just follow it word for word. Let's check off the boxes ourselves and see what happens. Try not to go to that place where you've had 10 years experience. Let's not go there. Let's try to follow our process and see what we get. How many of those proposals that we present do we actually get? What percentage? If we pitch 10 proposals, do we get 3? Do we get 6? If we're following the process and we're only getting 3 time and time again, and that's you and me, and we're both following the processes, that is going to be our expectation. And then we will start innovating. Maybe we can innovate the process to get 4 or 5. But if we're not, and we're about to hire a brand new person, our expectation is 3. And then we'll work together as a team to innovate. So can you see how that's a little bit different than if I just have a process and I say, Josh, follow the process? Now, that assumes that we've got the process documented. Well, that would then be a different pitch. I would say, Josh, I need your help to write this process. I want you to go through it. And there are 2 words that we like to use here, attention and intention. So I want you to pay attention as you're going through the proposal follow-up process. I want you to pay attention to it with the intention of writing down the steps so that we then have the documentation for someone who's never done it before. Attention and intention. So again, I'm counting on you. I'm asking for your help. I'm not making demands on you. I'm not asking you to do something that you don't already do. I'm asking you to help build this organization. I'm asking you to help us be successful. And if you don't want to do that, should you really be in my company? What I really need in my organization are people who are here for the right reason. They're on the bus because they want to go to 100,000 subscribers. They're going to succeed and achieve. Like, everybody's going to thrive if we can do that. Everybody's going to love working here. Everybody's going to make tons of money. If you don't want to work hard to do that, if you're not committed to that, then why are you here? Those are great conversations to have. If I brought you on way back when, in a systematic way, giving you my mission, values, and purpose, making sure that you're the right person for the right position and you want to go to the right place and for the right reason, it should be a fairly painless conversation. That's my spiel on implementation. Thank you.